G'day YouTube. Baubles on a lot here. I'm sure you've heard that today the Australian Senate debated and passed a motion to censure Fraser Anning, the ex-One Nation Queensland Senator, the scurrilous individual who received 19 primary votes on his One Nation ticket. That's how he came to become a senator. And as soon as he got into the Senate, he then had an argument with One Nation and he became an independent. He's championed a range of extremist, right-wing, white nationalist, Christian, Islamophobic extremist positions. And he made headlines a bit over a fortnight ago when his response to the white nationalist, Christian, Islamophobic, extremist terrorist from Grafton, New South Wales, who went over to New Zealand because that's where he could get faster firing guns with higher capacity magazines. And he tried to defend the European diaspora from the Islamic hordes by shooting up 2 mosques and hitting about 100 people and killing 50 of them. Fraser Anning opined that it wasn't an act of white nationalism, it was all an act of fear. The white community in Australia and New Zealand, according to Fraser Anning, are fearful of the Moslems coming to usurp our traditional European right to Australia and New Zealand. That's what Fraser Anning reckoned. And yeah, you know, like even a 17-year-old in Melbourne could see that that was wrong, so he egged the silly old prick. And then Fraser Anning assaulted and battered and abused the 17-year-old child in a public place. He hit him twice on the head. You're not allowed to strike a child above the shoulders, even if it's your own child and if you're disciplining the child. But Fraser Anning's claiming that he was defending himself. Kid broke one egg on his head and stood still. Fraser Anning turned around, stepped forward, smacked the kid in the head. Kid stepped back, raised his hands in a defensive gesture. Fraser Anning stepped forward again, smacked the kid on the other side of the head. Yep, that's Fraser Anning. So immediately a GoFundMe campaign was floated for the benefit of the egg boy. And I think it raised $50,000 for his potential legal defence, which didn't amount to anything because he wasn't charged with anything, and to buy more eggs. And a petition was started online calling for Fraser Anning to be ejected from the Senate, evicted from the Senate, thrown out, to lose his seat. And today the Senate voted to censure him. There's no actual mechanism for the Senate to throw a senator out. However, if the Melbourne and Victorian police prosecutor would get off their asses and charge him with assault and with child abuse, and then just show the video to the magistrate, then Fraser Anning can be convicted of a crime which carries more than a maximum possible sentence of 6 months imprisonment, and nobody who's been found guilty of anything carrying more than a 6-month prison sentence is eligible to sit in any parliament in Australia. So that would be the way to get rid of Fraser Anning. However, 1.5 million people signed the petition to have Fraser Anning thrown out. And I mentioned in a comment thread yesterday that nobody started a petition to support Fraser Anning. And malt liquor. There we go. The top is off the bottle. It turns out I was wrong. Today I went into town and I spoke with some of my connections. And I learned from one of my connections that a local floaty who wants to become a local yokel, an individual who has stood and failed to be elected to the council, an individual who has handed out how to vote cards for various minor independent extremist right-wing Fruit Loopy parties His name, seeing as he's entered into politics and he launched the petition of which I'm about to speak, his name is James Gresham. And he's kind of literal proof that just because you like aeroplanes doesn't mean you're a good bloke. Every time there has been a town meeting called to see what this local community could do to assist with the resettlement of refugees from various war-torn places, James Gresham has been the white supremacist, Islamophobic, alleged defender of Christian culture and civilization who showed up to protest, to speak against our community, doing anything at all to assist the resettlement of refugees because they're Muslim. So, guess who sent an email to the Glen Innes 7 Council announcing that he was really disappointed at the way Fraser Anning was being treated, and therefore James Gresham was setting up a petition in support of Fraser Anning. And could the Glen Innes Council please publicise this fact so that everybody could express their support on James Gresham's petition in support of Fraser Anning? Well, guess what, YouTuberosities? Part 1, news of Fraser Anning's request leaked beyond the computer that it was received on. My contact, who told me of the event, went and had a look at the Fraser Anning support petition on the website that James Gresham mentioned in his email to the Glen Innes 7 Council, seeking and soliciting support for Fraser Anning. And it was apparently a very simple little website with a fairly simple little statement expressing support for Fraser Anning and his right to express himself and exercise his democratic freedom of speech. Which Part 1, Line 1, considering that we are Australian citizens and subjects of the British Crown, and as such we have no Bill of Rights, we have no right to free speech, it indicates that James Gresham doesn't understand shit from biscuits when it comes to politics in Australia. Yet he has the effrontery to stand. He has the effrontery to launch a petition claiming to support Fraser Anning's right to express himself under freedom of speech provisions of the American Constitution. Typical, typical, typical. However, my contact tells me that there was a message on the petition expressing deep disappointment from James Gresham that after 24 hours there were only 25 signatures on his petition, whereas Egg Boy raised $10,000 overnight, $50,000 in 3 days. 1.5 million people have signed the petition in a fortnight to get rid of Fraser Anning. James Gresham's petition, 25 votes in 24 hours. Oh. But then, strangely, James Gresham's website fell down. Could that be because, as I was told by my contact who has connections, the Glen Innes 7 Council alerted Microsoft and the Australian Federal Police to the presence of a hateful petition expressing support for a hate speechifying politician. And when my contact went back to have a look at the website to see whether, another hour had got him another vote, perhaps, another signature, the whole thing was gone. Not just the petition, but the website too. So guess what? It seems that either James Gresham came to his senses and realised that he's in a statistical universe of 25. There are 25 people in Australia who are prepared to sign a petition expressing support for Fraser Anning. And James Gresham realised that he doesn't want to be associated with it, so he pulled it down. And therefore, I'm making this video so that everybody around here, we know who you are. We can identify who the extremists are, who the right-wing Fruit Loops are, who the Islamic phobes are. We know who the Nazis and the fascists are. We the people are keeping tabs on you bastards, and welcome to democracy, because you are never going to get any more than 5 to 10% of the Australian population to go along with your horse shit. Fraser Anning's support petition failed, just like every other political overture that James Gresham has ever made since he floated into town to become a sheep farmer. and a flight instructor of ultralights, which is why I'm really disappointed to find that, as well as underkin stumbling that lift equals weight and thrust equals drag, he's somehow got a short circuit in his brain that makes him agree with Fraser Anning and the white supremacists. Therefore, thus and because, I just had to make a YouTube video because I'm significantly pissed off with the arrogance and the effrontery of these ignorant, kettled fascists who think they've got public support. They honestly believe it. They talk among themselves. You know, V Phoenix, Stuffy in Taswegia, talks to Pete Finn on the Gold Coast, talks to VB Ed over there in Western Australia. They all lick Fraser Anning's asshole, and they come up with the conclusion that they've got a wave of popular support behind them. By jolly go, bye-bye jingo. Oh, they're going to take it all over. Yeah, fucking bullshit. Bunch of wankers. Whistling in the dark. Making up horse shit and expecting everybody else to believe in it. So for whatever it's worth, I suggest to anybody, next time they hear a ventilating right-wing extremist, a sanctimonious, self-righteous, Christian Islamophobic extremist, the sort of individual who thinks that we have to make Australia white again because they don't recognise that we're walking on Aboriginal land. The sort of individual who thinks that the reason their sheep farm's going broke is because the bloody greenies won't let them kill any more trees. Instead of politely shrugging your shoulders and letting them talk their shit, I say stand your ground, open your mouth, explain to them in really simple, polite terms that they don't know the difference between shit and shoe polish. Explain to them that they haven't read enough, they haven't paid enough attention to all of the facts. They suffer from willful, studied ignorance and illuminated tunnel vision. And then they got their fucking facts wrong anyway. Difficult to be polite when you're communicating a message like that, but do your best, fellas, do your best, because they have to be talked down from their pinnacle of bullshit, to which they've spent years elevating themselves, with the help of three-star howling half-wits like Pauline Pantsdown. John Howard claiming that babies were being thrown overboard to manipulate Australia's immigration laws. Tony Abbott running his concentration camps on Manus and Nauru. This Scott Morrison, the moron's son, the foaming at the mouth, speaking in tongues, Pentecostal Christian, who spent his entire political career, ever since the two aeroplanes hit two buildings and 3 buildings fell over in New York. He has been demonising Moslems in Australia, trying to use them as a wedge to get white suburban Australians to vote for him. He's a tourist operator from the western suburbs of Sydney. He thinks advertising and marketing jism is the way to make Australia great again. He just handed down a fucking budget last night, ripping something like $1.2 billion out of the National Disability Insurance Scheme so he can pretend to be running at a surplus. Outlining his plans for major tax cuts for people who earn over $200,000 a year, and a handful of chicken feed for anybody who earns between $30,000 and $80,000. Yeah, they all run together. The Liberal Party, the National Party, One Nation, the Hooters, Rooters, Feral Pig Shooters and Fishers and Farmers Party. Birds of a feather flock together. Fools seldom differ. But over here with the Greenies, us great minds, we think alike. And what we think is global warming is fucking winning. And it doesn't matter how much marketing jism you spread about in the suburbs, global warming is still winning. Extreme weather is still destroying your infrastructure, It's still making your agriculture uneconomic. It's making it unfinanceable because it's uninsurable to sow a crop. How long are you going to run your cities like that, eh? Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Such is life, James Gresham. Your petition fell on its ass. Ciao.